Now may I introduce the candidates? To my immediate left is Mr. David Martin. Next to him is Mr. Zito. And finally, Mr. Michelson. We're ready to begin. Timer's ready. The first question goes to Mr. Martin. And Stephanie, will you ask your question, please?
Thank you, Jara. With all the new and planned development in Stamford, can the infrastructure handle it all? Electric, water, sanitary, storm, and traffic? And how are you planning for the future?
Mr. Martin. Go ahead.
Our water infrastructure is perfectly fine. Our sewer infrastructure actually has more capacity than we need right now and is perfectly fine. But new development can bring additional traffic. That is why we have reorganized the transportation function. We have added a second city traffic engineer, which we finally got to just 2 months ago. We're working on a traffic synchronization and signalization program to improve that infrastructure. We are also repaving our roads to build that infrastructure. The other part of this, though, actually goes to Metro North and ensuring that Metro North and I-95 has the infrastructure for the opportunities that we have in Stamford. We're also trying to concentrate the development growth in the downtown and the south end so that it does not impact the neighborhoods. Now, there are some exceptions. For instance, the water side, the development there has particularly impacted the traffic, and one of the things we're doing is we are working on our street intersections. With the expanded transportation department, we are finally getting street intersection improvement projects off the drawing board and into the works. That would include the Atlantic and Henry Street. We just completed the Urban Transit Way. We're going to be working in the spring on Pulaski and Greenwich, as well as West Avenue and West Main. We're going to break ground on Oak Lawn. We're working on projects throughout the city to improve our traffic infrastructure and our transportation infrastructure to handle those needs.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Zito, your same question, please.
Folks, water system is not okay. And again, we're going to go at this again. Water system is not okay. The sewer treatment's been broken since the 1980s. Okay? We need another cesspool. I said that when I ran 3-4 years ago. Still didn't get done. Yes, we had construction, new buildings put down the south end. Yes, they did put new sewer mains, water mains in. What about from there all the way down to the cesspool? Every time we get bad rainstorms, Mr. Martin says, yes, we fixed that. Yeah, okay, you fixed it, but what about the rest of the town? Folks, we have pipes in the ground that need to be repaired. Chapin Avenue got paved. That was a joke. That should not get paved because there's sewer mains, water mains down there that need to be replaced. Let's replace them before we pave them. But no, it got paved. We are in trouble with water. More apartments get put up. Yes, we need development, but more apartments get put up, less water we have. I'm in the plumbing business. Yeah, you put water-saving toilets in the sink, so doesn't stop an hour shower or two here. But when you got over 5 to 6, 7, 8, 10,000 apartments, it doesn't matter. They're going to bring the pipe in. We need more water. We are in trouble with the water. In the traffic is a mess. But we only got so much time to go through all this. But folks, think about it. When we're watering our grass, there's 5 buildings in Stamford
Okay, thank
that are
you.
watering the grass at night.
Mr. Michelson.
First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, the Advocate in Yukon, and Stamford for having us this evening, and all of you for attending. I'm Barry Michelson, and I'm running to be your mayor. I've lived in Stamford for 40 years, raised my children here, and my wife and I call Stamford our home. My experience as a public servant and trust and rapport that I've built with the citizens of the city has prepared me to be your next mayor. As far as overdevelopment and the most important issue we have is when we have development is really to make sure it's done in an orchestrated manner and it conforms with our regulations, and we use it as a balance for both having not a balance, but to prevent congestion in our streets, make sure our infrastructure has been mentioned, has been provided for, but it's also to make sure that our quality of life issues are adhered to, that we have buildings are properly parked, the density is rigidly enforced with the amount of zoning we have, and not to prevent urban sprawl. Right now, because of the maturity of the community, developers are looking for other residential sites. We don't want today's residential development to be equal to the commercial bust that we're having now. There was a time when we overdeveloped our commercially. So I said it's important to keep a balance, it's important to adhere to our master plan, and important to follow our regulations.
Okay, thank you very much. I forgot to say that if you need to have your question repeated, because some of them are fairly long, please don't hesitate to do so. The next question will go to Mr. Zito first. Stephanie?
Very good. We'll stay on the topic of development. Critics argue that weak enforcement, zoning enforcement, lets developers such as BLT do things like tear down the old boatyard without proper clearance. And now that area is being proposed again for development, this time as potential office space for Amazon. Does the city have the infrastructure to handle all the new office buildings and the people that would arrive as a result of planned development?
Well, that's no. Okay, 4 years ago, I fought for the boatyard and for the boat people. And this year, me running, I'm not getting that much of support from them. Folks, I've been battling for that boatyard for a long time. I was in the boat business. I worked for John Herman's Marine Center, that a local company when I was 12 years old, sitting in the bottom of the boats. We need a boatyard back there. No more office building. The storm comes in, that's going to get bombarded, we're going to have more problems. Let's bring a boatyard back there. Let's bring a Live of 5 down there. Let's build a carousel. Let's make the property make us money. It's the deepest and the biggest port along East Coast. We can, if you want to bring a boatyard back there, we can get developers from Florida or Texas or Georgia or Carolinas. They would love to come and have that piece of property, rent it from us or lease it from us. Put docks back there. I remember big boats coming in here. No one's coming in here. It's a big flat ground, empty ground. I mean, folks, we got to make this a boatyard again, or make it something that people want to come to, a merry-go-round or something. We could rent the hall out, have weddings down there, beautiful grass. It's been done.
Thank you. Mr. Michelson, same question.
Can you just repeat the question?
Stephanie, will you repeat the question?
I hear a bit of an echo, that's why it's...
No problem. Critics argue that weak enforcement lets developers such as BLT do things like tear down the old boatyard without proper clearance. Does the city have the infrastructure to handle all the new development planned?
Okay, that's a number of different questions. Number one, that is probably one of the biggest, how can I put this? That is probably one of the biggest mistakes that the city has made and really missed a tremendously unique opportunity. Long Island Sound, to quote Mayor Christopher Murphy, our state senator, there's a $5 billion industry in that sound. You always look for something unique, something that attracts people, something that will bring in people into your city, add to your diversity. And that is a world-class boatyard. And we had the opportunity. We have an enclosed port with an enclosed waterway that can accommodate big, deep, large boats. Very few locations like that on the Sound or up and down the East Coast. So here we have this gift. And what are we doing it? We're basically making it available or considering an office building, which we could build any place. Apartment house, we can build any place. But this is not something we can build any place. Do we have the infrastructure to support it? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, the owners, BLT, have been given the density and development rights of that parcel to use someplace else. This is a unique, missed opportunity that we really should look into as a city. We need the diversity, and we're always looking for economic development opportunities. Here it is, in our face, and we're passing it up.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, same question. Please, let's save the applause till the very end, please. Mr. Martin?
So I was not on the Board of Representatives, I was not on the Board of Finance, and I was not mayor when BLT notified brewers that they were discontinuing the boatyard. My opponent was on the zoning board, and he talks about zoning enforcement, and the question is, why didn't the zoning board take an aggressive action for those several months? Since I've been mayor, there has been serious zoning enforcement. For instance, in the Waterside area, there was a development there where they built their foundation in the wrong place. I believe for the first time in the city of Stamford, they were required to demolish that foundation, which probably cost them upwards of close to $1 million, and move their building back, which also delayed the opening of their building, which cost them additional funds. BLT at their Harbor Gateway site built something that wasn't according to the plans that they had approved, and we enforced that. We went back and held up their approvals and had additional requirements for them to get approvals. We are doing zoning enforcement, and if you go now to the beautiful boardwalks that face the water, you can look across and you can see a new boatyard being constructed now. It is almost completed, but we will have a boatyard in the harbor rather than continuing lawsuits and continuing fights.
Is there an opportunity to rebut or no?
Thank you very much. No rebuttals, I'm afraid. But Mr. Michelson, the next question is yours. Stephanie?
Thank you. Last question regarding zoning. How will your administration deal with improving enforcement of city ordinances for zoning and illegal housing and the like?
Okay, well, that actually leads me a little bit to something I wanted to rebut. Actually, the legal opinions and advice that the zoning board got, both from staff and our legal counsel, were very often politically motivated decisions. And when questioned about it, there was tremendous resistance to bring in the land use type of counsel that were needed. The boards did not follow their own regulations, and that's why it's contested in court. And the new facility certainly will not meet the demand because it's for smaller boats and the demand is for larger boats. And this came out during the course of 22 public hearing sessions. I'm sorry, can you repeat your question again? I'm sorry.
How would your administration deal with improving enforcement of city ordinances, including zoning, illegal housing, and the like?
Well, first of all, when applicants come in, the applications should conform with the regulations and not just have applications submitted. That would be, well, I said that just for the benefit, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Without, a lot of applications are submitted that will not be able to be built without benefit of some kind of change of regulations. That's unacceptable. The second part of that is we have regulations that when reported to the zoning enforcement officer, who only reacts or responds or conducts himself as zoning officer only 1/3 of the time. Regulations have to be enforced. By not enforcing regulations, we invite others to basically also not enforce the regulations. We have illegal housing as a result. We have overparking and congestion in many of our older.
Thank you, Mr. Michelson.
We really need to
your
have
time is up.
aggressive enforcement.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, your turn.
We have met with the Board of Representatives and others many times to talk about the zoning enforcement process in the state of Connecticut, where the state courts have basically challenged the fact that often politically motivated decisions are brought to them as they try to infringe upon people's basic property rights. I would have to say, in passing, that our law department is led by one of the preeminent attorneys in the state. And listen, she is unbiased. She gives me a heck of a time sometimes on things I want to do, but in terms of giving unbiased and sound advice, she is the best. No question about it. I stand behind her in everything she does, and I will not have boards and commissions making up their own laws. With regard to zoning enforcement, I have also been frustrated. I've been frustrated by the length of time it takes to get things moving through the courts and by the fact that our persistent violators often clean up their act just before we're ready to go to court. Obviously frustrating and obviously embarrassing to go to court and say, oh, there isn't a violation anymore. So we're starting to try some creative actions. One of them is that we are now asking for an injunction to stop a frequent violator from continuing to violate zoning. To the best of my knowledge, this is the first time that any city has asked for an injunction to stop one from continuing to do zoning violations. We are also working for the first time, again, I think for the first time in the state, to ask for a warrant to go onto blighted properties so that we can clean those properties up.
Thank you very much. Next question will go first to Mr. Martin.
Mr. Zito gets.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Mr. Zito, your
Wait, but
turn.
just hit the flint, is it? I'm not a rip
My mistake. Please go ahead.
Can we repeat this?
Your 90 seconds.
Yes, of course. How would your administration deal with improving enforcement of zoning regulations, including illegal housing?
All right, folks, zoning in this town, no good, shot, needs to be replaced, okay? We have a lot of blight properties that are dead. And again, let's get back to the overbuilding and all that. Folks, we all know about the overcrowding in Stamford, illegal apartments, zoning comes into play. You have High Ridge, they want to put a clinic in there against zoning. They want to change the zoning. Everybody will change. No more change of zoning. Zoning needs to be fixed. New zoning officials need to be enforced. We're not getting everything enforced. It's the lawyers that we have. There's some lawyers in the city of Stamford that are hired by us or going after people that are a little bit late in their taxes and they're trying to foreclose on people and they're taking money and making high things. Folks, there's a scandal going on in our government, in our town center, in our town hall. And I'm going to be looking into it, and it's going to be coming out. And again, they want to build properties over here on Cloden Road. Randy Salvatore, 25 detached houses, 37 townhomes on 4.5 acres. Okay, then we have Stamford Catholic Church down here on Atlantic Street. They want to build apartment towers, 8,000 square feet, rental space on and below it, 212 units. We can't be doing this. Zoning has to change for the taxpayers, not for the developers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zita. Okay, now it's Mr. Martin's turn for another question.
This has to do with city employees. For decades, the Stamford Advocate has published annual lists of the highest paid city employees. And for decades, there have been a disproportionate number of employees doubling and tripling their base salaries as a result of overtime and other pay. Are you satisfied with the management and supervision of city employees regarding their schedules? Are there any changes you would like to make?
I'd clearly like to always improve. So anytime we say that we're perfect, I would say that's an imperfect statement. So I always want improvements in the way we manage our employees and we watch for their overtime, et cetera. But let's be clear. The average salary of the city employee is well below $100,000. And when we start talking and looking at the top employees of the city of Stamford, I'm not in the top 100 list. I'm not in the top 150. In fact, nobody in the mayor's office is in the top 150, and nobody in my cabinet is in the top 150. Who are in the top 150? They are police officers, and they are working substantial amounts of overtime, and I'll make this statement. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The police officers, when they are working on city work, they are well worth the pay. There's no question about it. And given the benefit costs that we have in city employees, I would rather, and this is true of every single union, I would rather have well-managed overtime than to have to hire additional employees. The cost of benefits are so high, we get a better bargain when we have trained employees that are on mission working overtime rather than hiring more employees, which add to our benefit costs.
Thank you. Mr. Zito, same question.
Well, I just heard a story. I hope it was a good story. 179,000, Mayor Martin. Your cabinet, big dollars in there. If I become the mayor of the city of Stamford, trust me, I'll be walking the government center the next day, and I'll be grabbing everybody, shaking them upside down in that government center, and get our money back. Folks, you laugh. You laugh. You know how much money you guys, your tax-paying dollars are going? And going out the door, people swiping time cards to leave? Yes, we got overtime. There was a fire department employee was going in, clocking in, going in, open the gate for half an hour and getting paid for 4 hours. I don't hear nobody laughing. Because I tell the truth. I'm not candy coating nothing, folks. Every debate I've been to, I tell you the truth. I don't candy coat. Yes, the police officers are working overtime for us. They protect us. But you know what? A lot of police officers are going to be retiring soon. We got to replace them. But let's replace them and do it the right way. And hire somebody, look for the benefit package that's out there. You're not hiring the right person. The right person ain't looking out for the city of Stamford. If I become mayor of the city of Stamford, I will have that person taking care of us, the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zito. Mr. Michelson.
Okay, number one, I feel we have to start benchmarking and figuring out exactly how many employees we really need in all these departments. At a recent Board of Finance meeting, our Director of Operations indicated that he had a lot of supervisory people on his staff, but they didn't all know their jobs, so he himself was very tied up and would have to hire some additional people. This is unacceptable. We have to have people that know their jobs, and we need to know that they have the number of people to do the work. Right now, we have a situation where we have one supervisor for every foreign staff. We certainly don't need that kind of ratio. We also have 55 town departments. We really have to see how much duplicity there is and how many we really need. We're a town or a city of 128,000 people. When you have too much government, a lot of things get lost get lost as lack of accountability. We've got to figure out how to operate efficiently, effectively, and deliver government services that to the people in this city that come into the town hall right now. There's a tremendous amount of folks that essentially say they can't get their permits, they can't get cooperation. That all has got to change. And as I said, the first thing to do is to benchmark, make people accountable, cut down the number of duplicitous departments that we have and the overlapping authorities and responsibilities.
Thank you, Mr. Michelson. Thank you very much. The next question will go to Mr. Zito first. Stephanie, you have a question?
Now we'll switch to the topic of education. How much input do you think the mayor should have in hiring and firing of the superintendent of schools?
That's a touchy one there. Okay. Well, folks, this is supposed to be the closing statement, but I'm going to come out with it. Mayor Martin has developed to do what they want, and we all bear the cost of lost time in traffic and more stress in our schools. But with no prior investments, I mean, after all, isn't a $1.5 million going to fix our schools? Mayor Martin spent the money rebuilding the driveway of a large hedge fund owner. Folks, this is a debate. Everybody attacks one another, okay? I ran for the Board of Education. Yes, the Board of Education does need funding. Our governor, not doing a great job. We're taking a beating on it. The schools are getting fixed. I ran for Board of Education. We finally weaseled somebody out that was stealing $75,000 a year, or if not more. Okay? He's gone. We have another company in there. I like to get a local. The Board of Education used to have their own electricians, their own painters, their own carpenters, their own masons. Let's bring them back, the taxpayers. Let's hire the taxpayers back. Keep the money in the city of Stamford. But we're not. A management company here, a management company here. Folks, gotta get rid of the management company. Keep it in. Keep it in. Greenwich does it. All the other towns do it. How come Stamford can't do it? Why? Poor management in the government center. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Michelson, same
Just
question?
repeat. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Could you just repeat?
Oh, sure. How much input should the mayor have in the hiring and firing of the
Much?
superintendent?
How much input?
Yes.
I feel the mayor should have definitely more input. Right now, the Board of Ed is a predominantly an elected board. The mayor serves as an ex officio member of the board. That means without vote. I certainly think, considering the current circumstances, there certainly should be more input from the mayor's office. I had the opportunity to go through one of the schools just the other day. Repairs seem to be started, or maintenance work seems to be done, never completed. I saw stained mold stains in the gymnasium, skylights that leaked, and even worse, holes in the outside of the building where it was obvious animals lived. This seems to be an ongoing, recurrent problem. I went into an area where there were temporary classrooms, and the stench was awful. And underneath it, you could see where not only where animals go, but the board at the exterior was actually flaking off. You just had to take it off with your thumbnails. There's no reason why, when repairs are started, they shouldn't be completed. And there's no reason why schools, especially in our community, should ever be to a state where the schools are in such need of repair. So yes, I do think there has to be more accountability from the Board of Ed. When work is done, it has to be completed. I think the teachers do a terrific, fabulous job, but I also think the resources have to be there to make sure we have a AAA system, because we're a AAA community. And as I said, I would believe that certainly the mayor should have much more control and have much more. There should be much more accountability to the mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Martin?
Let's answer the question.
Yeah.
I don't have a vote, but I can assure you I had a lot of input to the Board of Education, to the leadership of the Board of Education, and not only in the last superintendent who left us, as well as participating fully in the entire board as we interviewed candidates for the next board. I interviewed candidates for the superintendent. And I didn't have a vote, but I can assure you, I was very much a participant in that. I do not feel that my job is to overrule the Board of Education. I'm not in charge of the Board of Education, but nonetheless, I can use my influence to both help the board and to correct their directions when I am concerned they're moving in the wrong direction. That's included the selection of the superintendent. That's included a number of legal issues. That's included the fact that we're now building a new school. And I think that's the answer to the question. I did want to mention one other thing, because we talked about benchmarking briefly just a minute ago. Just so everyone knows, we do benchmarking. And it's a struggle, because every town does things differently. But we have fewer full-time employees. We have fewer employees in the city of Stamford per capita than any other major city in the state. And during my tenure, I have terminated approximately 175 employees and transferred their functions to other places so that the services are still provided, and yet we do it at lower cost.
Thank you very much. Okay, another question goes first to Mr. Michelson. Stephanie?
Still on the education subject.
Okay.
Even with the addition of the new school, we are facing overcrowding and major maintenance issues at our schools. How would you support the Board of Education in addressing this issue?
Well, as I said before, one of the chief things I think has to be done is there has to be more accountability. I was shocked when I went through the school the other day and saw that the physical building itself was in such dire needs of repair, and you had teachers really making do with what they, the limited resources they had, and really doing a terrific job with the kids. That's why I feel there has to be greater accountability. When funds are issued, we have to know that they're being spent, and reports have to be, progress reports have to be issued. It's unconscionable. You have projects started, and one mother was there at the school with 3 daughters. She was there for 12 years, and still there were the same leaks, the same mold problems, and the lack of repairs. This is unacceptable for our community. So I said it's a matter of holding people accountable and making sure when you issue a contract, the work gets done, is completed, and is inspected afterwards. We have the same issue also, not to digress, on our city streets when contractors dig up the streets. They come in, they dig up the streets, they do a sloppy job, and they go their merry way. People have to be held accountable. That's what leadership is all about. That's what I will do, provide that leadership.
Thank you. Mr. Martin, same question.
I have already identified an issue with the infrastructure in our schools. I've already said that publicly. We've worked on getting a new school. We've worked on getting a new police station. We are now working on repaving our roads. And in doing that, one of the several issues that we addressed before we started paving the roads was how do we manage the utility cuts? The issue that he raised has been solved with new processes and new procedures to help protect our roads into the future, as well as other issues that we have addressed in order to improve the cost effectiveness of our road paving. I don't run the school's facilities. They are under state law. They are under the authority of the Board of Education and the superintendent. Having said that, I agree that the schools need to be improved, and we have been making improvements in the schools to the extent that our funds allow. Now that we have the funding for the new school and the police station out of the way, then I am hopeful that we can continue to put additional infrastructure to improve our schools as well as improve our schools as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Zito.
Well, folks, the gentleman that we could point the finger at, he's no longer with us. Al Barbarati, AFB. He got paid for jobs that Barry just said, open a rot hole here, this here, that here. AFB stole from Stamford taxpayers, literally stole. The only reason Stamford High School got the sidewalks fixed near to the gym, because when I ran for the Board of Education, I asked them, how come you never fixed the sidewalks that you got paid for 2 years ago that I tripped over? And people in this audience know that's true, because the next day, he had the machines there, and everybody called me, hey, Zito, what did you do? This guy's fixing things. This is what happened, folks. We got taken advantage of. He did it. He hit and run. That's what they call a hit and run. He took our tax money, and he took off. Dan Malloy's buddy. All right? What can we do now? Well, what we can do now? We can get bids for jobs. I know we got an outside management company, and I'm still against it. I'd rather get bids come in from different mason contractors in Stamford, have a license, have insurance, and fix our things that we need to be fixed. Stanford teachers, they're doing the best they can do right now, but our funds comes from our government, all right? So, yes, and the kids in the school, they're great. You know, we have 1, 2 bad apples, but they're great. I went to West Hill High School, talked to the students, and let me tell you, I'm impressed. And I'm impressed with the security system and the health things they do have there. Sorry.
Thank you very much. All right, another round of questions. Mr. Martin, you're first this time.
With all the development in Stamford, why are there no schools on the south end, water side, and the west side? How do we resolve this?
Well, I didn't make the location decisions for the south end, the water side, or did you say the west side? I didn't make those locations, and incidentally, Westover is part of the west side, so they, you know, people argue about what is where, but...
Audience
nonetheless-
question, sorry.
Okay, nonetheless. Having said that, we now have students in portable classrooms. Those portable classrooms are 16, 17, 18 years old. Mr. Michelson has in fact noted that in his first-time visit to Roxbury, he discovered that some of them were not in very good condition. That's true. I believe that in addition to the elementary school now, provided we can get funding from the state, and that's going to be a challenging problem, I would like to see us build another elementary school, and I would like to see it built probably in the south end. How we do that, how we get the funding for that, I don't know, but I believe that it's important for us to provide a school that's closer to much of the kids that demand it, and that we can still, and we should do it in a way that still ensures that we have diversity across our school district in all of our different schools.
Thank you very much. Mr. Zito, same question.
Folks, in the past, City of Stanford sold property left and right. They weren't thinking about how big Stanford can get, okay? They sold some of the property that Stanford had. So where are we going to build this school? Okay, yes, we do need a school, but where can we build it? We have no property. Hey, wait a minute. Let's ask BLT. Maybe they donate some property. Instead of putting a high-rise up, let's put a school there, like on B&S Carden property. That's perfect there for school. Is that going to happen? We don't know. Folks, that's the hardest thing. We have property, but where can we build a school? Strawberry Hill, when we ran 3 years ago, I told Mayor Martin about that school was going to be empty. Sure enough, bam, we jumped on it. That's great, but we got traffic problem there, folks. Have you been on Strawberry Hill and Upper 5th Street? That's going to be a nightmare. All right, but we got to fix that. But again, it's hard. Folks, you've been around City of Stanford. Where could we build a school? If I became mayor, I will ask the public for your opinion. Come see me in my office and give me your opinion. Let me figure out where we could put it. You know, go for a helicopter ride. Let a helicopter circle around, find out where there's a piece of property. But folks, there's no property for us to build on unless somebody wants to donate good piece of chunk of land. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Michelson?
Well, it's an interesting question you ask, because I remember there's a time when most of us went to school, and we had neighborhood schools within our neighborhoods. Now we seem to be more interested in, or very focused on this concept of diversity. So we're busing kids all over the place. I hear of kids being on a bus for almost an hour each way to schools. So you have an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, that's 2 hours. To me, that seems like an awful long time. We have to really rethink the way we actually allocate schools. The neighborhood school was an important social function. Kids met their friends, their parents were engaged. It was all local community. As I said, now we're kind of spreading out all over the place. Kids have play dates. Parents are sometimes reluctant because of the tremendous distance between the various different neighborhoods that we have. So we no longer have, or seem to be discouraging that community concept, which I really think is important. So I'm not sure that what that neighborhood concept means anymore. I mean, it's nice to have a neighborhood school, and I think we certainly should revisit that educational concept of having a neighborhood school. The other issue you said was on the busing problem. I mean, we spend an awful lot of money on busing. I would rather see that some of that money, yes, diversity is important, but some of that money put back into classroom, the teachers. We really need the teachers.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question to Mr. Zito first.
Moving on to public safety, While Stamford has a reputation as a safe city, and we've been lucky to avoid the terror attacks that's so close to us in New York City that happened this week, we still face occasional violence in our streets. What do you see as the most pressing threats and challenges to public safety in the city?
Every day is a challenge. We thank God we get out of bed. You know, folks, you can walk across the street with the phone in your ear and almost get hit by a car. Stamford is safe. We have a great tactical force SWAT team. We got great dogs. They can find anything. You know, we are ahead of a lot of cities in that way. But again, we do need more police officers, police aides in the special police to help us with the traffic situation that we have. If we can get the traffic rotating and moving, this stops road rage. Okay, we had a lot of road rage. Shootings going on, it calmed down a lot. Stamford Police Force is on the money. They're stopping it. But if you see abandoned cars parked next to your streets, and I bring this up all the time, to let you folks be aware of, they use that car as a depot. You know what a depot is? A depot is they open the trunk up, put the drugs in it, put the guns in it, and close it. Everybody has a spare key. But the problem is why we can't tow the car, because the car is legally registered. Okay? Well, guess what? We passed the law for so many days, I want to make that day shorter. If that car doesn't belong there, hasn't moved in 2, 3, 4 days, guess what? Time to tow it. Let's find out who owns the car, pop the trunk. And guess what you're going to find? You're going to find cocaine, automatic guns, you're going to find drugs, you're going to find a lot of things. Let's get this stuff off the street, and then we won't have any violence. Every town has violence. What is it? We don't know. But every town does have it.
Thank you. Mr. Michelson?
Okay. Well, the FBI website lists Stamford as one of the safest cities, and then on the bottom there's a caveat, and it says that this shouldn't be used as a rating. We looked at other locations, and Stamford on the web, other locations were not listed as in the top safe cities. One of the things we do know is that back in 2007, a little over a decade ago, we had 294 police officers. Right now, 2017, we have now 265 police officers, so we're in a net deficit. We know that a lot of our younger officers are often called back to work to do double shift 2 and 3 times a week, which is creating a morale problem. We also know that police services are also lacking in certain neighborhoods on the west side, and they feel that their well-being in there is affected because they don't have a lot of the police coverage necessary. So they have a lot of drugs, a lot of what they call dollar bars. I think we really need to rethink our staffing. The mayor seems to feel that paying overtime is more beneficial than having the right staff, right amount of staffing. So, but I think it's important because we do have these young officers. Their morale is low. It's affected. Their family lives are affected, and we should have the right amount of police officers so that we can provide security, especially on areas like the west side and the Cove, and areas where there are high incidences of crime, and there's a greater need for police services.
Thank you very much. Mr. Martin, same question.
So we are the safest city in New England, and it's not even close. And by extreme example, Bridgeport, which is not the most dangerous city, has had 23 homicides this year, and we unfortunately have had none. We have hired 50 police officers since I've taken office. We have been increasing the size of the force. It was published in the paper today. I believe the number was 284, not the number that Mr. Michelson has been quoting. We also are talking about adding body cameras to help keep the community safe and to reduce the situations of violence that happen with officers. That is a true commitment that I have made to provide those body cameras, and we've completed the first phase where we had 29 officers as part of a squad testing those things out. We have put GPSs on the police cars. We didn't know where the police cars were when I took office. We now know where they are, and we have improved emergency response times. We have put up emergency surveillance cameras in the city of Stamford in 8 city parks, and we're planning on a few more, provided we have money. We have also instituted a reward program with the Police Foundation for illegal guns or for other illegal activity that has been very successful. And last but not least, we are working on programs, particularly with the Boys and Girls Club, with others, to provide after-school or late-night activities for teens and tweens. And that's something that's been going on in the Yearwood Center that's helped us deal with gun violence.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're ready for another question, and it goes...
And our crime rate is down 25% since last year.
Okay. It goes to Mr. Michelson first. Stephanie, you have one?
Also related to public safety. This one drills down more into gun violence. The public doesn't always read it in the news, but there are incidences involving guns in Stamford on an almost daily basis. How would you improve upon the gun violence prevention programs already in place? Or what kind of program would you like to see implemented to curb gun violence among kids in our neighborhood? Not sure which neighborhood, but we can speculate.
Okay. Gun violence is a serious issue. We certainly have had a number of shootings in the city. Number one, I think we really ought to encourage the most strict enforcement of our regulations. Right now, illegal trafficking of guns is at an all-time high, and enforcement is generally down 43%. There's no reason for that. The second part of that is we also have an early release program. So basically what we're doing is we're saying we should go after and promulgate possibly new laws and regulations while we're not enforcing the old ones, and then compounding the problem with putting the people who commit crimes, in some cases violent crimes, back on the streets early. It's all counterproductive. We've really got to very seriously enforce our gun regulations and very stringently and guns should not be on the street. If that were the case, we would not need the programs like the mayor's buyback programs.
All right, thank you. Mr. Martin, same question.
I have been very clear from the beginning. I am for common sense gun regulation. I have joined organizations like the Mayors Against Illegal Guns. I have testified in favor of common sense gun control, such as universal background checks. My opponent has gone and testified against gun control. Let's be clear about
That's not true.
Okay, thank you.
I can tell you the dates. In any event, we have strict enforcement in Stamford. We strictly enforce every opportunity we have to seize guns that are illegal in any way. We do so. There is no lack of strict enforcement. Our problem is guns that come, which were at one time might have been illegal in another community, they come to Stamford in the trunks of cars, as I think Mr. Zito has seemed to indicate, and then suddenly they're illegal guns when they're here. And if we know about them, or if we get a reward or a tip, we will go out and seize those guns, and we will use it to the maximum extent of the law. Those that are using guns in our community are a danger to themselves, to our children, to us, and to the community as a whole. And I take it very seriously and have since the beginning. We've had gun buyback programs. We've had all sorts of efforts to control gun violence, and we are succeeding in that regard. But it is a challenge when the nation's gun controls laws allow so much to happen in so many other states.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. Mr. Zito.
How would you improve upon the gun violence prevention programs already in place? Or what kind of program would you like to see implemented to curb gun violence among kids in neighborhoods?
That's why they put the big guy in the middle, keep these two guys apart. Okay, folks, the gun violence, yes, it's up, but it's down, like I said before, with the gun violence. Gun back buying is doing very well at Stamford PD. But these gentlemen never grew up in Stamford. I'm 53 years here. I know every side street, and if you want to say gang member, I know where a lot of guys live around here and where the action is and where it starts from. I would help my PD to go there and tell them, hey, check this place out, check that place out. You got to know the streets in Stamford if you want to become a mayor. You got to know the people in the streets if you want to become the mayor. That's who's coming out and voting for, and that's who you're working for. You have to go out and communicate with the communities. If you don't come out and communicate with the communities and say, I'm going to have a door open and the door is closed. Folks, I'm out there. I'm not even the mayor, and I'm out there cooking hot dogs, cooking hamburgers, going to communities, helping people out, fixing kids' bicycles when I see them on the side of the road. You got to show your face and so people know who you are. And with the gun violence, like I said before, if we can catch those cars that are parked illegal or parked there and they are there for a while, that's where the guns are. And how does Mr. Zito know it? Well, maybe Mr. Zito's out working on someone's boiler in the middle of the night and you see this guy opening the back of the car. What's he getting at 2 o'clock in the morning? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question to Mr. Martin.
Now we'll switch to demographics of the city. More than a third of Stamford's population is between the ages of 20 and 24. The downtown population itself has been skewing younger and younger, including the recent opening of the UConn Stamford Residence Hall, adding to that number. What can be done to engage more people in this demographic to vote, to run for office, to become more involved in the community?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy that we have, from what I've seen, we have increasing desire from all age groups, but particularly the ones in the 20 to young 30s coming to Stamford, because this provides a quality of life that they just can't get anywhere else. And it is important because when I talk to the businesses, their number one issue is not our property taxes. Their number one issue is, can they get the workforce they need? And when they talk about the workforce they need, they want software engineers and they want digital marketing. And, you know, maybe I could go back to school and get those skills, but the reality is they're usually people coming out of the universities with bachelor's or master's degrees, and that's what they're looking for. And we need those companies to fill our commercial office buildings, first for jobs for everyone, and secondly to support our tax base. And so far, we're moving in the right direction, but we're not quite there. When it comes to political participation, it is a challenge, because if you provide a great environment, sometimes people take it for granted. They think they're entitled to it, and they don't come out to vote. I can assure you, I'm trying to get more of the young people to come out to vote because they're coming to this community, they love this community, and I think we're going in the right direction, and so do they. So if you've got any secrets out there on how to get more people to participate, either to vote or to run for office or participate, I'm welcome. I'm anxious to do that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Zito.
Here's an easy one. Let's throw a keg party. I'm only joking. I just want to get you people to laugh a little bit. You want to get young people? There you go, have a keg party or a tailgate party. Folks, we got to bring more activities here, okay? Let's hold on. Like we said about the boatyard, here's an example. We want to bring more youth come in. We want them to vote. But you know what? There's not much to do here. What is there to do? Go to the bar? That's all. Go to the bar, go to the movies. Let's get the boatyard property. Let's make some activities. Let's get a field going. We got parks now that are overcrowded and overfilled. They want to play volleyball. They want to go rollerblading. They want to play ice hockey, ice skating. We need to do something so we can bring them here, so they can come outside and do activities. Flag football league, softball league. Softball leagues are going great here. They're running out of room, running out of some time. Get more activity going for the young people, and then just let them see what's going on out here. Go out there and talk to them. You know, invite them to the town hall and say, listen, this is what's going on here and here and there. Bring them out, or go to the rooms, go to their, come here and have something. If nobody knows who you are, they're not gonna acknowledge you. They have to know who you are first. The youth today is the future for us.
Thank you very much. Mr. Michelson.
Yes, thank you. I just want to make something very, very clear. My testimony in Hartford was strictly for strict enforcement of gun regulations. Nothing more, nothing less. And if the mayor had read it, he would have seen that. As far as your question, this is an issue I raised up when we redid the master plan. We have a very young population, a very cosmopolitan population. It's also a very transient population. And I implored them to please to look at what the ramifications long-term, whether these people will live here, these young folks. A lot of them are singles, some of them not, combinations of men or women, but living together in dense urban quarters. At the time of our master plan, approximately 50% of us were single-family homeowners, and 50% of us were apartment dwellers. Now the number is skewed the other way. So the nature of the city is definitely changing as we become more urban. And it's hard to know what the long-term effects are going to be for that. As far as keeping them here, I don't know that they are willing to say. We see there are a lot of out-of-state parking license plates, rather. This indicates that they're not prepared to necessarily stay here. So I don't know that we fully understand that trend. It's something we should explore because it's important that we maintain a well-balanced community. But right now, to have a predominantly transient is something we really have to look at.
Thank you very much. Next question to Mr. Zito first.
I'd like to speak about the fire department next. 4 years ago, a defining challenge in the city was the precarious relationship between our paid and volunteer firefighters. Are you satisfied with how the department is functioning these days? And are there any improvements that you think can be made?
Yes. The fire department, just remember one thing, folks. Yes, we have paid firemen. But before paid firemen, back in the days, there was what? Volunteer firemen. We all need to get along. I was supposed to sit down with the union leaders from the fire department. I didn't get a chance to. We have 6 more days till we're voting. I have a lot of friends that are fire department guys, full-time, and a lot of volunteer. We all need to get along, okay? If our fire breaks down, what are these guys gonna do? Have an argument in the middle of the street where our house is burning? You all saw Chopin, okay? The fire department needs to get along, volunteer and paid. And if I was mayor, and hopefully I will become your mayor, I will have them on the table, sit down and talk. Let's talk this out, union or no union, okay? Maybe the mayor has done this, but it did not succeed. There's still static there. When there's static, there's fire and there's smoke. I want to put it out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Michelson?
Yeah, I'd like to praise the commitment of the volunteers who are certainly very, very committed to the community. There seems to be a tremendous underlying hostility between the 2 fire departments. We really have to be able to work that out. There's a lot of resentment over the ordinance that we voted on as taxpayers. I'm not sure exactly the best way to integrate that at this time. As I said, I'm not even sure. It's a difficult situation, but somehow or other these 2 groups have to be brought together. The volunteers do a tremendous job. Of course, the paid workers do a terrific job. But there is this underlying hostility about the manning of the firehouses, the people who operate the fire trucks, and it's really not in the long-term best interest for us to continue to have this kind of hostility between the 2 groups.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Martin?
Just for the record, why don't we read the question again so I answer the right one?
Are you satisfied with how the department is functioning these days? And are there any improvements that you think can be made?
If you talk to the people that I work with, I am never satisfied about anything. I always want more to be done, better, cheaper, faster, whatever. 4 years ago, the volunteer fire departments had a lawsuit against the city. Furthermore, in selection of an assistant chief, the volunteers used I'm going to call it a loophole in the way that the charter provision was provided. It created quite an issue with how we were going forward and where 3 companies basically ignored the other 2 companies. We've made a lot of progress. We really have. We now have our professional fire service is now located at TOR Stations 1 and Stations 2. They wouldn't do that before. We have been increasing the funding for the volunteer services, but I've been doing something different. I basically started saying, hey, you have benchmarks of performance. How many volunteers do you have? Are they certified, et cetera? And if you have those performance metrics, then you get this funding. And funding has increased. And guess what? We have 18% more certified volunteers than when I started. Is it perfect? No, it is not. And we have a few individuals on both on the volunteer side and the professional side that just seem to want to fight with one another. And we often have grievances from our fire department going back and forth. But we are making progress. I would like the progress to be faster, but we have made enormous strides to make this community safer and have these organizations work together.
Thank you very much. Next question will go to Mr. Michelson first.
This one's about small business. How would you improve the purchasing procedures to have more minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, disabled-owned businesses, and veteran-owned businesses included?
Repeat the question. Go ahead.
I think I can condense it. How would you improve the purchasing procedures to include more supplier diversity?
You mean for buying municipal product?
Yes.
Oh, geez. Basically, I mean, the city does have a responsibility to make sure that it buys from low-cost bidders, or low-cost providers and suppliers. It is important that there be controls within the contract or the request for proposals that the city has, and I believe that they more than likely do have procedures for getting minority and business owners and giving preference to them as well. I don't know about veterans, but women certainly, and minority contractors. I don't know if there's any way of doing it better than recognizing them. Of course, it's their responsibility to make sure that they're competitive, in providing their services and to the city. So I don't know that much can be done other than having responding to RFPs responsibly and as low-cost bidders.
Okay.
And making sure they are bidding.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Mr. Martin?
So a couple of years ago, we launched our small business portal. It was for small businesses of all types, and part of its purpose was to, in fact, help new businesses understand the regulations that they have to go through, whether it be city regulations, state regulations, or federal regulations. And what a laundromat has to do is very different than what a florist or a restaurant has to go through. Part of that website was, in fact, how do you get opportunities to participate in set-asides or for minority-based contracts or small business contracts, and that was included as part of that website to provide that information. And I have attended meetings held by organizations that are pushing small businesses to help show our commitment to those purposes. Whenever we get state funding, there is a requirement that when we go out to bid, that the bidder has to ensure that there are appropriate minority vendors, women vendors, veteran vendors, et cetera. And we have a very solid purchasing department to make certain that those regulations and requirements are adhered to.
Thank
I
you.
would also mention
Sorry.
that along these same lines, we've made a concerted and strong effort to hire a diverse new firefighters and diverse new police officers, and that is part of our requirement. We're not going to hire people who are not qualified, but we're making a point to try to hire a police and fire department that better mirrors this community.
Thank you very much. Mr. Zito?
Folks, everybody here is created equal. I was born in Southville Village. If you know, does anybody in here know what Southville Village is? No, huh? Nobody knows? Raise your hand. Does anybody know? Okay. I was born there. Every nationality, doesn't matter who you are, what color you are, what race you are, what you believe in. Everybody is created equal. All right? If I was the mayor of the city of Stamford, I will have my doors open for them. If you want to come in and open a business, let's do this. Let's do it the right way, the state way, this, that, and every other way we have to do it. But for the town to start buying, I would love to buy from the locals. That's what you want to do. Local people open up a business, let's give them a jump start. Let's open the doors for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next question will go to Mr. Martin first.
If elected or re-elected, how would you use your position to elevate the voices and concerns of the marginalized?
That question could mean a number of different things.
Yes, take it how you like.
And so I'll try answering for two different ways that I could see that question. One is that, in the past year, I've been to 12 different neighborhood meetings to share what's going on in the city and hear what's going on in their neighborhoods, answer their questions, and we come back with things to do. We also have people coming into Mayor's Night In and Mayor's Night Out, and I've done that a couple of dozen times, where again, people can come in and share their concerns, and we change our procedures or we fix problems when we can. But there are other people out there, and one of the things that I have to remember is that I not only have to listen to the people who are in there talking, I have to listen to the people who don't have a chance to come in. Maybe they're working their second job, or maybe they don't know. And one of the real challenges is, how do you balance those that are saying out loud what they want versus those who don't have a voice to speak for themselves? What are we doing for those who are disabled in our community? And one of the things that we're doing is we're moving forward to improve our city's response under the ADA Act. And some of the things we're doing is, right now we're changing the entrance into the government center lobby because it's not ADA compatible, and it's just bad for any mom with a stroller. We've also put in mats down at the Cummings Park so that those in wheelchairs can get down to the beach. We've worked on
Thank you, Mr.
passageways on
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
streets so that the disabled and the blind can get down the streets.
Mr. Zito.
Folks, this should have been done 4 years ago. Why are we waiting now? Think about it. Why is this waiting now? Not only 4 years ago, Malloy's days. It should have been done already. Why are we taking the brunt of it now? It should have been done back then. Folks, there's a lot of work that has to be done, not only the government center, all over Stamford, make it accessible for the handicapped. Wheelchairs, walkers, automatic wheelchairs. There's tons of times that I've seen the one gentleman I remember going down Henry Street with an automatic wheelchair, getting stuck. Now, I got to help him get on my truck and help meet a bunch of other guys. Folks, if you see someone, help them. But for me to go out and repair, I'm not the mayor yet. If I become the mayor, trust me, I will get our masons away. Oh, wait, but we don't have a mason division. They're gone. We used to have 4 of them. So let's get a bunch of masons together, anybody that they help the handicap at their own home, who needs a ramp build. Volunteer your time. We do have volunteers, companies, corporate companies come in and they help out. We can get more of that, more people involved. It makes a better community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Michelson?
This is probably the single biggest issue we have, and this has been one of the cornerstones of my campaign, is that a lot of folks do feel marginalized. They feel that they're not being listened to, especially in the neighborhood organizations. And a lot of neighborhood organizations have actually coalesced. They've had neighborhood issues, and they feel that when they go before the boards and commissions, decisions are predetermined, and they're not listened to. We had a recent hearing at the zoning board, I guess it was 2 weeks ago on Monday night. And we weren't, and I wasn't on the board, I was just there as an observer. And people weren't trying to address a particular use that was being presented in terms of, they weren't presenting their opposition on zoning terms. They were presenting their position of frustration and anger, that they should have to even come out, that the boards don't necessarily reflect that, excuse me, let me backtrack, that the boards are not really responding to the concerns of the neighborhood, that they always listen to the builders and the developer interests. And folks are getting tired of it. I said that's one of the issues, and that's why I'm getting the tremendous support that I am, and it's across party lines. The other issue is lack of enforcement. No matter what the mayor says, for 3.5 years, there's been complete non-responsiveness to issues people have had in their neighborhoods. And it's really a travesty. People feel that their neighborhoods are being marginalized, they're being marginalized, they're paying a lot in taxes and getting no services. And
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. This will have to be the last question before closing statements, and it'll go to Mr. Zito first.
In addition to getting more crowded in recent years, Stamford has gotten a whole lot noisier. In particular, trucks with tricked-out exhausts and motorcycles fitted with aftermarket straight pipes rattle windows, scare kids and pets, and disturb the peace. The police say there is little they can do, even though Stamford has clear noise ordinances on the books. As mayor, what will you do to enforce these laws?
Sell my car and my bike. No. Folks, DMV does have a noise ordinance in which I will be looking into. Also with tenant windows. I worked for a local glass company years ago when I was a kid with tinted windows, okay? And, so you can hear me up there. There was a block, an orange block that you used to put across the window in your tent of your driver's side door. If it was too dark, you scratch it, you take it off. If not, your registration will get pulled. I will make sure that the city of Stamford and DMV, Stamford PD and DMV gets together and let's put a task force. We do have a Sergeant Gallagher that also does a very good job for a one-man army to pull over trucks, to go after the people. Our PD is not that big enough to go around and do it, but Sergeant Gallagher makes time on our time to do his job, and he does his job very well. But again, get DMV, you know, they're messed up right now, but get DMV here and Stamford PD, work together, let's get our metering blocks, or our meter machine, and stop and fine them. They don't want to fine, we get caught again, pull the registration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michelson.
I heard the same complaint from, I wonder if it's the same person, in the Cove just 2 or 3 days ago about loud vehicles. The police probably should be monitoring. It's a matter of providing, as I said, police services and making sure police are available and more readily available in more of our neighborhoods than they are presently. Another part of that issue, which I get constant complaints about when it occurs, is noise starting on construction sites or where there's construction being done, sometimes in the wee hour of the morning, especially in some of the more congested neighborhoods. And it seems like the ordinances are not necessarily always enforced with regard to noise. And I know for a while we had some issues down at the south end where BLT was doing some building. There doesn't seem to be the kind of strict adherence to the decibel level ordinances, but certainly having more police and making them more diligent and responsive would certainly go a long way to solving this quality of life issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin.
So I don't know how many years ago it was, I guess I'm getting older every year, that I was tackling noise complaints in North Stamford. You know, 1 and 2 and 3 acre zoning, leaf blowers that people were using on Saturdays and Sundays and destroying their environment. And I was working to get the Board of Representatives to pass more stringent laws with regard to noise. And sometimes the Board of Representatives just won't support it. I also had to work on contractors who are working on homes. I think it was on North Lake Drive, as I recall. That were starting at ungodly hours. And in that case, I was able to talk, I personally intervened, talked to the contractor, talked to the resident, and I was able to convince them that it was in all of our best interests for them not to start at 5 o'clock in the morning with their work on that particular house. I don't think this is a new problem. I think this is a continuing problem, that there are people who will take their mufflers off or do whatever it is or turn on their boom boxes, and it is difficult to enforce. It doesn't rise to the same level of many other crimes, but it is one of the challenges that we have as we live together, and I've seen that challenge before, and I've had difficulties convincing my fellow board members to take a harder stance on some of the noise pollution that occurs out there that is disturbing to people.
Thank you very much. All right, on to the closing statements. We said the order would be the same as the first question. So, Mr. Martin, you have your 90 seconds.
Thank you. Let's cut to the chase here. Stamford is a success story, and leaders, both Democrat and Republican, throughout the state know this. Our city is safe. We're building a new school and a new police station. We're paving roads and working on traffic, and our finances are strong. It is not by accident. For the first time ever, the city is fully funding pension costs, and assets have increased by over $145 million. Every year, we have managed our current expenses and generated a healthy budget surplus. We have negotiated labor contracts to better control the city's long-term benefit costs, because I want to keep taxes down both now and into the future. And as a result, the city has top-tier AAA financial ratings from the bond rating agencies. Businesses, both large and small, are coming and expanding to Stamford. Our city's unemployment rate has dropped again to 3.4%. Our downtown is alive. We have revitalized the South End. We have significantly increased tax abatement for seniors. We're forging a new positive direction for our schools, and UConn has just opened new dorms. We've hired 50 new police officers, and Stamford continues to be the safest city in New England. We're even filling the infamous hole in the ground. People are coming to Stamford and want to live here because of our wonderful quality of life. No, not everything is perfect. I know that. Much remains to be done, and we are working to find long-term structural solutions. But the bottom line, the city and our people are a success story. I would appreciate your support this next Tuesday. Let's keep moving in a positive direction, and I'd like to thank you for your attendance tonight, as well as the League of Women Voters and the Advocate for hosting and moderating this debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we had originally agreed that the applause would be at the very end. Now everybody will need to be allowed to be applauded. Mr. Zito, your closing statement.
Good evening to all. My name is John Zito. I am running for mayor in this great city. First, I would like to thank the Women League of Voters and the Stamford Advocate for sponsoring this event and for inviting me. The League has always been about getting people involved in the election process and having all the candidates attend the forum showing that they're true to their mission. I and 1,000 people live in Stamford that are struggling and unhappy with the directions that it's going. My opponents will talk about their education, their credentials. They'll tell you the great things they have done for you or will do, but they're out of touch. Neither one struggling with paying their taxes. Neither one of them has a kid in the school, which they did. Neither one of them are in touch with your concerns, but I am. I was born and raised here because this is my home. The great asset that we have here in Stamford is all of you. I am sure some MIT or Harvard education brainiac came up with the slogan, "The city that works." But I am sure they're speaking about the government. But the reason for the city that works is because it's the people. More often, the government just gets in the way and causes distress in people's lives. They want to tell you what to do and bring them to the way they are thinking. I am the candidate for all of Stamford, not just the special interests, not for the Democrats or the Republicans, but for the people in Stamford. I want your support. I mean, after all, look how politicians have screwed things up. Let's get Stamford moving again. I'm John Zito, and I want your vote. Thank you. I got more to go, but this is short. I wish we could stay a little longer here tonight, folks.
How about a round of...
You guys haven't heard nothing. And I'm going to keep on going.
Please.
Thank you.
Mr. Michelson, your turn.
Thank you. Again, thank you for having us today, and thank you for all being here. There are many issues facing Stamford that weren't addressed here. Among the most pressing are, first, commercial properties are not being appraised at fair market value. In fact, high-end commercial properties are underappraised, underassessed, and undertaxed by over 20%. This inequality shifts the tax burden to residential property owners like yourselves. Large commercial properties should be assessed appropriately. If they had been, my opponent would not have needed to increase taxes on residential properties so dramatically during his term. The AAA rating that was boasted about is merely the ability to tax and our ability to pay the tax. And the rating agencies make that very clear. Second, by June 30th of last year, the 4 major pension trusts and the post-retirement benefit fund were underfunded by at least $445 million from our official statements. That's nearly $500 million of benefits that were promised to city employees that the city cannot pay. Third, taxes and debt will have increased by well over $100 million over the past 3 years. Solution to these problems will not be easy or free, but this is no reason for the mayor to ignore or deny the magnitude of them. These debts will fall to our taxpayers. It seems that the mayor is content with kicking the can down the road, but in reality, the road is shortening every single day. There are many things that can be done for little money. One might even ask, why hasn't City Hall implemented them already? We can run transport transparent and honest administration. We can enforce zoning and traffic regulations. We can keep our parks.
Mr. Michelson, would you please wind up? Your time is up. Your time is up. You have 10 seconds. Thank you.
Yes.
Read the sign, folks, read the sign. I'm not for sale. Read it. Read it and weep.
Ladies
And this is our last debate, so thank you.
10 seconds. Well, let Mr. Michelson have 10 seconds to finish, please.
Good luck.
You too.
I know.
Good luck.
Okay.
You want to finish you can finish.
I can finish?
Yes. Okay.
There's much to be done. Stamford has the talent, the resource, and the people to do so. The people of Stamford deserve a government that puts its residents first. With your vote on November 7th, it will. Please support me.
Thank you. Okay, over to you.
On behalf of the Stamford Advocate, the League of Women Voters, Yukon Stamford, and our volunteers from Yukon Stamford Debate Society, we want to thank you so much for coming, and to our Facebook and Twitter participants, thank you so much for the questions. I'm sorry I couldn't read them all. They were great.